Today's episode is not a super light and fluffy one, but it's something that we absolutely need to be talking about. If you are in a season of grief, whether that's maybe the loss of someone you love, a divorce, a huge job loss, a mental health crisis, or any major life disruption, and you're beating yourself up because you just can't, quote, get it all done anymore, I want you to stop. You're not supposed to be getting it all done right now. And today, not that you need permission, but I want to give you permission to completely rewrite the rules of how you manage your time during these seasons. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that can feel heavy. And the reason I'm doing this is I recently did a short video in my app. I've got an app called the Pink Bee in the App Store and Google Play. And every Wednesday, I drop a new quick short video. It's called The Weekly Buzz, answering a question that people write in. And someone wrote in saying that they were in a season of tremendous grief due to a loss and was asking for help because she's like, I just can't seem to get it together and I don't know how to, get my productivity back. And my response to that question produced a lot of emails in saying, people need to talk about this. You need to save this video. You need to get this message out. And so that was really the inspiration behind recording this particular episode here on the Work Life Harmony podcast. Now, if you happen to be watching this video on YouTube, I do have notes because when I talk about something this heavy, I know I can get emotional. And so I want to make sure I stay on track. So if you see my eyes moving around, that's why. Now, before we dive into the conversation here, I want to be very, very clear and upfront. I am not a licensed healthcare professional. I'm not a mental health professional or a grief counselor. All right. What I'm sharing today are planning strategies that I personally have used during a very difficult season of grief. These are not medical or therapeutic advice. All right. If you are struggling with grief, trauma, mental health challenges, etc., please reach out to qualified professionals who can provide for you the support that you absolutely deserve to have. My kind of story and relation to this was back in March of 2021. So just over 4 years ago, my family experienced a very tragic, untimely death of my niece, who I always considered my first daughter before my own daughter was born. And it derailed everything. It derailed basic routines. It derailed, the planning system I'd been using for years. It derailed my ability to think clearly, make rational decisions, or even just sometimes function. And I remember at one point, it was weeks after, and I remember thinking like, okay, Megan, you teach this for a living, and yet you are really struggling, which means I'm sure others are as well. And it really had me digging into, figuring out how was I going to navigate this season. But more importantly, why was I getting more and more resentful as the weeks went by? So before we dive into my actual tips for you on like some more practical ones, again, I'm not a mental health professional here. One of the things that I really began to recognize that it made me very resentful and angry, which is why I think so many people feel like they need to be productive right away when they're navigating a season like this, is when you look at the way our society is built, especially here in the US with our typical work situations, is society very subtly tries to time box our grief, right? If you were to look at any bereavement policy in most of our businesses and corporations here, most of them will give you a week, maybe two, if you're, quote, lucky or have excellent benefits. But the kicker to that is they usually require you to use all of your unused vacation, yes, vacation, to manage bereavement if you want to actually get paid. And because it's time boxed to 1 or maybe 2 weeks, there's this subtle expectation that you don't realize it's being put on you is like, okay, well, I'm allowed to process this for the 1 week. And then I just need to bounce back. Like, that's how long I'm allowed to grieve. And then I'm just going to need to come back and be me in full swing the very next week. And friends, I don't know about you personally, but I know for me, that was not enough time. That is not how grief works. That's not how healing works. You can't time box it, right? And because we're getting these external messages that's kind of implying, shouldn't you be over this by now? We start to believe that we should be over this by now. And then we start feeling guilty for not being back to quote normal on someone else's timeline. And I want to be crystal clear here before we dive into my suggestions for you when you're trying to juggle life during this. Nobody gets to time box your grief but you. And I don't even think you should be time boxing anything. But nobody gets to dictate how long that journey is going to be, because it's not something you're ever just going to get over. All right. It is going to be learning how to navigate what your life is now with this massive change. All right. So there's kind of two big messages. Oh, well, aside from my rant on that, there's two kind of takeaways that I want you to really implement here if you are in this particular season. The first is this: you are not going to keep doing what you were doing before. Meaning, when your 1 week of bereavement is over, I don't want you to think that you have to show up and be the same level of productive that you were before. All right. And women keep reaching out to me. They're usually apologizing. I feel so bad, Megan. I just can't seem to get done. What can I do to get back to getting it all done? Friends, when you are navigating a season like this, guess what? You are not supposed to be getting it all done. I repeat, you're not supposed to be getting it all done. So quit trying to think you should. So my very simple 3-step process that I used, and I did this for months after my niece passed, is very simple. And it looked like this. Step number 1 was at the beginning of a week. I looked at my calendar to see what commitments were on there. True commitments with other people, appointments, meetings, etc. So I would assess what's on there. What are my current commitments? Step 2 was me having an honest conversation with myself, saying, with each one of those appointments that was on there, is this something I can do, or is this too much? All right. Notice step 2 was not make it all happen. It was to actually say, is this something I can do or not? And if the answer was not, then my goal was to figure out how to reschedule it, cancel it, or get it passed off to somebody else. All right. No guilt, no apologies, no explanations needed, just not doing it. Now, I want to put a caveat on here. I understand if you are working in a, what I call a W-2 job where, you are contracted to give someone X amount of hours in return for your paycheck. I get it's not that easy. I get you can't look at it and say, I'm not going to work today, right? But what you can do is all the extraneous stuff on your calendar, the club meeting, the book club, the extra event that you've said yes to, the dinner out, the whatever those things may be, you have a right to say no. No, I'm not going to show up to those. Now, the third step here is for things that don't show up on your calendar. All right. And I want you to give yourself constant permission to let things go for a while. Friends, the house doesn't need to be as clean. That project you've been working on, that can go on pause. That house decluttering project, you can step back from that for a little bit, right? The whole new fancy, I'm going to meal prep for 20 hours over the weekend and, we're going to grow our own all that can go on pause if that feels like too much. Your number one job right now is just to take care of yourself. That's it. 3 steps, nothing fancy, nothing complicated. Assess what your commitments are. Really let go of the things that you know, no, not right now, and then give yourself permission to let a bunch of the other stuff go. Your ultimate goal during this season right now is to really lean into the definition of productivity I use, which is this: getting the most important things done in a stress-free way. And right now, during that season, the most important thing is you, your energy, your mental well-being, your health, your family, and everything else gets to take a back seat. When I think back to that March in 2021 for me, my house did not look great for a long time. Laundry piled up. Totally fine with that. I put a pause on hobbies and activities. I even had to put a pause on some of my daughter's activities because the driving involved in that was just a little too much for a few months. I wasn't in a mood to go show up with friends and organizations I was in. I put a pause on those until I was ready to go back, right? If I looked at something and my heart sank, I said no. Now, I run my own business, which means I get to own my own time, which is different than a corporate setting, but I scaled back a lot for a while, okay? And I lowered my expectations of myself in the sense of the traditional form of productivity. I held to the standard of taking care of myself. Now, the second message here that I want to leave you with, because there's always this subtle messaging of, when am I going to get back to the old me, right? When am I just going to be normal again? When is everything going to get back to how it was before? And I'm here to tell you it's not going to. Something has fundamentally changed when we're going through something that causes that deep grief, whether it's the death of a loved one, a divorce, a job loss, whatever it may be. And I always hear people saying, I'm just trying to get back to the way things were. But you can't go back. You can't go back to the way things were because something has fundamentally changed in your life. Now, that's not a bad thing that you can't go back to the way things were. What it means is you get to define what your new, quote, normal is, right? My old normal is not the same as what my new normal is. And this isn't about lowering standards or giving up on goals or anything like that. It's about honoring the fact that you are likely not going to be the same person you were before this experience has happened, which means for you, priorities may shift. Things that you want to do may shift. They may look different. New priorities might emerge. Things that used to be a priority may suddenly not feel as important as they were before. And this means that your goal through this is not to get back to the way, to what your old normal planning and productivity looked like and what your old routines were. It's going to be to learn, discover, and define what those new ones are for you. All right. So you're not going to time box your grief. You're not going to look for strategies and hacks and tips to make you suddenly be like super productive after just 1 week. And your goal is not to go back to the person you were before this, right? It's going to be to learn, who is this new you and what is that going to look like? Now, there are just some other little small, very pragmatic things that you can lean on during this time. Again, lower the bar for some things, seriously, like the house cleaning, the perfect meal preps, my child will never eat a store-bought chicken nugget. Like, just let some of that go for a little bit, 100%. Ask for help. Ask for help with the basics. Order your groceries and get them delivered, right? Order pre-done meals if you need to. Ask for help with errands, driving, etc. If you can, avoid making big life decisions during a season like this. Learn from my experience on that one. Honor your energy levels. Some days you will have more capacity than others, and that's totally normal and to be expected. And remember that as you navigate this, it's not going to be linear. It's not necessarily going to be every day is better than the last. You're likely going to have some good days and you're likely going to have some really bad days. And that's okay too. And by saying okay, I don't mean that you love it, but that is a normal way of progressing through this. Even if you are not in a season of grief right now, there's still some underlying important messages here, which is something I'm always talking about, which is the fact that your planning system should flex and bend with your life, with your realities of your life, and not fight against it. And these same principles can apply during really busy, overwhelming seasons, whether they're at work or with kids or big life transitions, right? Maybe you're on a big life transition with a massive move across the country. Some of these same principles apply here, right? Good planning isn't about forcing yourself to keep the same pace no matter what. It's about adapting your approach to match your current reality. Now, if you are personally navigating one of these difficult seasons right now, please know you're not alone. You're not failing at time management. You're not failing at productivity. You're just being a human during a really difficult time. And your number one job right now is to prioritize yourself and take care of yourself and do what you can with what you have. And that's enough. And you're enough. And if you know someone who's navigating a really different season, really challenging season of life right now, and only if you feel it's appropriate or of value to them, share this episode with them, because sometimes we need reminders from someone else to give us the grace that we so desperately need. So take care of yourself, friends. I'll see y'all next week.